I never looked at my values. I never realized what was important to me.
This is Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 233, originally aired August 10th, 2016. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you get a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we have a conversation about values and how important it is for us to have clearly articulated values and what is important to us. Because when we have that, then it allows us to move forward and it allows us to do the personal development work that we want to do. Because if we don't have a clear idea what that is, taking action becomes really hard. Before we jump into the interview, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, I appreciate all of the notes that I get from the website and emails that you send to me, and I try and respond to all of them if I can. It is difficult for me to respond to you if you do not give me a return email address. For example, I got a really interesting inquiry from someone named Kate sometime in the last 72 hours, and I would have loved to responded, but there was no return email address. So if you are Kate, please email me again so I can get back to you, gene@tappingqna.com. And when you fill out a question, a comment, something like that on the website, make sure if you want to hear back from me, you let me know who you are so I can do exactly that. If you haven't done so already, you should be subscribed to the podcast so you can get this episode and all of the episodes. You can do that in any podcast app in iTunes. If you go to tappingqnapodcast.com, it'll give you all the instructions for being able to do that, as well as downloading the Tapping Q&A app. It's available both for Android and Apple devices. This is so you can take the entire archive. I think this is audio 299 in the archive. So between full episodes, partial episodes, bonus episodes, you can take those with you and have access to them wherever you are. There's even a little search feature so you can type in a topic. And if there's a podcast on that, it will pop right up and you can consume it and just enjoy the goodness of all of the information that is there. Today, I have a conversation with JB Glossinger. JB is not a tapper, but I found his way to his work because he is one of the Hay House authors. He currently has a book out called The Sacred Six. And I wanted to have a conversation with him because of his disposition around creating values and knowing what those values are, which then dictates the action that we take. Because if we don't have a clear idea of what we want, it's very difficult to make it happen in our life. So I interview JB, and then after the interview, what I have is 4 ideas where you can take the information that JB has shared and integrate it into your tapping daily, weekly, as you are making this transformation. Because I think the information that he has to share is a great framework to help us create transformation in our life. And then if you take the tool of tapping and lay it over the top to supercharge it, then you're going to get results and be able to take action that much quicker. Before we get to the interview, a reminder that the Tapping Q&A podcast is presented by Pain Relief Miracle. Pain Relief Miracle is an all-natural spray created by Jason Laird, a Chinese medicine practitioner. Basically, he took the anti-pain cream that his mom had for her arthritis, took all of the active ingredients from that, found the natural analog to each of them, and created an all-natural spray. It works on pain, cuts, bruises. This weekend, I had a friend in from out of town. Over the course of 3 days, we walked 27 miles around New York City on concrete, which meant that I was wearing the wrong shoes most of the time and ended up with blisters all over my feet. Pain Relief Miracle has done an amazing job just in 3 days in relieving the pain and having those blisters go away. Because it is all natural, you can also use it on your pets. If you go to tappingqna.com/pain, you will find information on how you can receive 33% off of your first order. And I want to thank Jason for continuing to sponsor the podcast. Pain Relief Miracle is in my medicine cabinet, and it should be in yours as well. So without further ado, here is my conversation about values and how they can frame the action we take with JB. I received a really interesting email from a friend of mine from college who I hadn't heard from in a long time. And she was looking for some of the tapping resources on the website that I provide. I had just said, hey, great, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. What are you looking for? Do you have any questions in particular? And she replied, life just hasn't turned out exactly like I thought it would. When you bump into someone who is at a certain point in their life where they realize things have gone off the track, aren't going the direction they thought it was going to go, what is your initial response? What do you think when someone shows up in that capacity?
Well, I get that a lot. So that's something that a lot of people ask me is, JB, my life isn't where it wants to be. It's not going the direction. In fact, I always tell them, if you don't think God has a sense of humor, right, then just show him your plans. And you'll start to understand that, we normally don't get what we want. But a lot of it goes back to my story. I went and did an MBA, went through corporate, thought that was what I was supposed to do. I did all the degrees and education and got everything and moved up to the board of directors, had all the success. And I was sitting in my office miserable, hated my life, and I hated myself for hating my life because I come from a blue collar family in Indiana, and we didn't have much, and here I am making 6 figures plus, company car, everything, and I'm going, how can you be angry about your life when you got everything that should make you happy, but inside I was crumbling. And so a lot of us get in those situations where we do things for other people. We're not really clear about where we want to go. And we end up in a situation like I was, sitting in a corporate environment, running a company, and absolutely miserable.
When that happens, I certainly know that, when people come to me, they have a very clear idea what they don't want, but they're not exactly sure how to even craft an idea of what they do want. When you bump into that place where okay, this is the wrong fit, this is not who I am, this is not where I need to be, but I don't know otherwise. What does the process look like, or how do we start wrestling around with that to start moving in a different direction?
One of the issues that I've had with personal development over the years, and I love my masters, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, they've all changed my life, Les Brown. But the problem is that nobody's really ever sat down and said, let's get clear. We can use neuro-linguistic programming. We can use all neurosocial conditioning. We can use all these techniques. We can goal set until the day is done. But if we don't know what direction we need to go, then there's a problem. So there's a foundation for this, and it's really what I use in my Sacred Six process. So the first step is we have to understand what's important. So like me, I'm sitting there yelling at myself going, what is wrong with you? You got a great life. You're making more than your parents did. In a month, you do what they made in a year. What is wrong with you? What's the breakdown here? Well, the breakdown was one of my number one values was freedom. And here I was working 60, 70 hours a week. And my entire career, I never looked at my values. I never realized what was important to me. So all the decisions I was making were financially based, a lot of them, materially based, and ego based. And so I kept going that direction, not realizing that I wasn't in alignment or congruency with my values. So the first thing I say is, to somebody is, have you ever done a values assessment? Do you know what's important to you?
And when you use the term value in this setting, what do you mean by that, other than the one example you gave there, freedom?
To me, values are the things that are the most important to you. And there's some basic ones, right? So we could go through Maslow's hierarchy of needs and talk about some of those. But at the end of the day, it's the stuff inside of you that is really, really important. For some people, security and family is very important to them. And they would have been perfectly fine in the job that I had because their values were in alignment with, getting a great job and having a great house and a perfect family. And, that's all they really wanted was to be secure. And the value is, what are the things that you hold dear in your heart? In fact, what I help people do is get 6 of them so that we can base our decisions on those. So if family is very important, freedom is very important, spirituality is very important, and you keep taking these jobs that are taking you away from your family, taking away from your freedom, and not allowing you to go through with your faith, you are not going to be a happy person. You're out of alignment.
There's a sense of coming this way to 6 values. why 6? Why not 5? Why not 7? Like, in your mind, how did you land at a place that 6 was a significant number?
It's kind of funny. It came from Earl Nightingale. He was telling a story that Napoleon Hill told, who's talking about Ivy Lee and Charles Schwab. Now, Ivy Lee is known as the father of public relations, and Charles Schwab actually ran the steel mills, not the financial. It's the same guy, but at the time, he was running the steel mills. And Ivy Lee came into him, and he said, I've got something for you that can change your business. So he took down on a piece of paper and he said, I want you to write down the 6 things that you need to do that are the most important 6 things. And then I want you to start on number 1 and don't move to number 2 until number 1 is finished. I need you to focus on that. So Charles Schwab said, okay, I'll do it. And he said, if you get to 5 and 6 and they don't get done that day, you move them to the next day. So Charles Schwab went and started to apply this. And literally, he started to apply it to his management team. And it's one of the things that he says is the reason the steel industry took off in the early 1900s was because they put this through. And he gave Ivy Lee $25,000, which is the equivalent about of $250,000 in today's money for that 10-minute lesson. I heard that and I had a revelation. I was like, this is how I get things done. I need to figure this out. So I took 6 items every day. And then I built an entire life system around this 10 years ago. And that's what I've built my life around. And I found mission, values, goals. I put the alignment together with those 3 and then broke it down into projects and daily tasks. And so 6 is the current theme that runs through everything. And it goes back to this old esoteric wisdom to Charles Schwab, Ivy Lee, Earl Nightingale, and that whole group before. So that's where this whole process was built.
Dispositionally, I come from the same place you do around this idea. And I like this idea of putting really practical steps first. That oftentimes when we find ourselves in this personal development conversation, it's really easy to have really soulful conversations and try and do deep transformational stuff. And if it's not showing up in any sort of practical action in the moment, it becomes a really great conversation that we had at 11 o'clock at night with a good friend over a nice glass of wine. And the next morning when we get up, there's no actual practical difference to that. And the fact that you hooked into, there's these 6 things that I need to be doing as a starting point, I find really significant as we're going into doing this sort of transformational work.
I need some structure. I need to know why am I doing what am I doing and why does this all make sense? And so that's where I put that together. The values is the first part. We've got to understand this is what's important to me. Okay, now that I understand what's important to me, okay, then let's put a mission together. Okay, and the mission doesn't have to be this thing that the Archangel Gabriel comes down and sings to you. It could be, I lost my cell phone and everything in my life needs to go that direction. You have as many goals as you want, but don't be working on more than 6 things. And let's have one overriding mission. And then let's clear the clutter. And if your to-do list has 100 things on it, guess what? You're not going to get them done anyway. So cut them all off at 6 and get the focus on those that are so important. And so that's the process that really works well because it's, in reality, it's very simple. And most things that work are, but it's just getting your head around that and allowing to have some discipline and saying, you know what? You're right. I am doing too many things. And that's why nothing's getting done.
So when we make a decision to focus, for most people, intellectually, we get to a place and say, great, I want to focus in this way. I have some really clearly defined values. I have a mission. This is what I'm working towards. And our intellectual response to that and our emotional ability to do that because of the habits that we have, because of the fears that are lying underneath the surface, all of those things that can be getting in the way. When you were starting to make this transition and you were moving to a place where you were moving from one type of way of living a life to another type of way of living a life, what were the tools, the process, the approach that you were using as the old habit popped up, or the desire to multitask, or the fear that this is the wrong path because I have some cultural story that's telling me that? What were the things that you were doing that was allowing that transition? Because I'm guessing it wasn't a switch. It wasn't one lifestyle, now it's another lifestyle. What did that process look like?
No, very astute observation. I love that. No, it was challenging. I mean, the first thing that I had to do, and this was very hard for me, is I wasn't in the best shape. I had lost weight, where most people gain weight. I was down 140 pounds. It's kind of funny when I speak. I show a picture. I look like I was just coming off a heroin binge. I mean, I became gaunt, and I don't know. I lost interest. I looked older then. I'm 47 now, and I looked like 80 then. The first change that I needed to do to keep that focus was I had to get in a little better shape, and I had to change from a night owl. Not a lot of people want to hear this, but I had to change it from a night owl to a morning person, because it allowed me to have the energy through the day, the 3 o'clock drop off. I had to change my diet. I had to change my habits, my ability to function. I had to reach peak states, and that all came from first saying, hey, let's get my health a little bit better, allowing me to have the mental aspect of clarity and focus when I needed it.
One of the things that I find really interesting kind of as I navigate the day is I really think of the world kind of as a resource management problem. I have a limited amount of time. I have a limited amount of energy. I have the machine that is my body navigating the day. And that doesn't mean that I'm disregarding thoughtful, soulful, artful things, but my ability to show up and make transformation and be creative requires me to have the energy and the space to do it. And I really love the idea around the fact that if I'm going to transform my life, the first thing I need to do is to make sure I have the resource state to be able to actually do transformation. Because when we're transforming, we're not only changing maybe the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world, but we're also having to overcome habits that are deeply seated, and we need energy to be able to make transformation happen in our life. And I love the practical first step. It's not after I have insight, I need this amazing soulful transformation. It's I need to have the resource to be able to go and do transformation.
I love it. I mean, that's what we all, if we all start to think a little bit differently about that, it's amazing. I mean, I come from, again, the background of personal development, studying, set goals, get your mind on it and get it going. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the energy, I think it's Jimmy Buffett that says it's hard to love Jesus when your feet stink and you're hungover, right?
I think in terms when I'm taking action, there are hunting activities and there are gardening activities.
Great.
Hunting activities are about these things and I'm going to get immediate results. The gardening activities are these persistent things that I'm doing over time, knowing that at some point in the far future, there's going to be harvest that is going to be cultivated that I can then take in. And I need to be doing both of those things. And the hunting activities have a tendency to be easier because there's this immediate return and result. When you are facing these things that require tenacity, that they're the gardening activities that I'm hoping for something to sprout. I'm hoping for something that I can reap later in time. Are you sitting down every single day and reading the mission and looking at the values? What does it look like daily to help you stay in tune with what it looks like in a long term?
Another great question. So the big part of this is, we want to do a review of the things that are important to us, the values. And really, I have a schedule for that. And you don't have to do it every day. But the thing that you do need to look at is the goals that you're working on, the projects. So you have these specific projects that are going to take you to a goal. And you got to look at the why that you're doing the goal, because that's what it's all about. No motivational speaker can really motivate you. They can help remind you of the things inside of you. But what will motivate you are deep reasons why you're doing the things that you're doing. So that will give you the tenacity. You'll break down brick walls. But you have got to be able to look at your mission, say, okay, this is where I'm going. I got my values. These are the goals that are going to take me there. Okay. And then these are the projects that I'm doing. Well, when you're doing the projects, you need to look at those whys and say, okay, why am I doing this?
I'm a firm believer of the fact that everybody in our lives wants us to transform for the better as long as they don't have to change. When we go through transformation, when we become more authentic, more in line with ourselves, we start acting in the world in really different ways. And that can be disruptive to the people around us who have become dependent or codependent upon us to provide something in their life. What do you recommend for people who are starting to implement, starting to make change, and they're getting overt or subliminal pushback from the people in their life who don't want them to change?
Well, you just said, I think the most important thing is, and that is to make them aware that they could get pushback and they're going to have, because most people aren't aware, and that's why they self-sabotage back. The other thing, and you hit on, there's a couple great things you hit on. The other thing is we have to move away from codependency. In all relationships, you need to be independent. And if you have codependent situations, those need to be worked on because they just don't work.
And I guess what that does is that brings us back to the beginning of the conversation about having this really clear sense of what our values are. And it can't be something that we're just paying lip service to, but it's something that we need to have a real sense of commitment and connection to consistently by really saying, this is what is truly valuable to me. And I need to make sure I keep reminding myself and being in line with that, because if I don't, then other momentary pressures and other momentary of I need to be comfortable in this moment is just going to keep derailing us and moving us away from that over and over again. And if we're not able to hold it at the front of our head, it's going to be hard to make transformation at all. Well, that seems like the perfect place to cap this off. Thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, my man. It's awesome. Great to be here.
So I hope you enjoyed that thoughtful conversation. As I was editing it this morning, getting ready to put the podcast up, I was just rethinking through and thinking of the places that tapping really resonated and how we can take the information that JB shared and really use it in a specific way for transformation. The first thing that really struck me this morning as I was re-listening to this is just the idea of remembering how much resistance there is when we are letting go of our family stories and we're choosing a new path. And family doesn't have to be immediate family. It could be our cultural family. It could be the time that we live in. But the environment around us, which has created very specific expectations about what our lives are supposed to be like. And when we start naming values that run counter to that, it can be really difficult for us to create transformation. So before I begin any transformation, I find it really useful to spend time simply tapping on this idea of I have been given stories, I have been given paths, I have been given the way that works from the people around me, and I appreciate the fact that they have given me these things, and I am choosing to take on a new story. And when we recognize that fact, that what we're doing is we're simply choosing a path that's new for us. It's not a rejection of what has been given to us, and it's not a sense that we're letting go of this past, but instead we're choosing a new way. It's going to make that transformational process really easy. As a dovetail to that, as I sat down and I thought about my 6 values from listening to this conversation, a couple of the values I named, I could notice some resistance because it felt like I shouldn't claim those as values, that I'm not worthy of the value, or it's foolish to claim it as a value. When people struggle with all of these other things, how dare I have the value of having freedom to do what I want when people can't do that? And so as you come up with your values, before you even think about implementing them, just pay attention to how they resonate with you and the resistance that shows up. If resistance is showing up, it doesn't mean that it's not a value that is right for you, but instead there's a part of you that's running contrary or struggling with that value. And when that happens, it makes it very difficult for us to move forward. So tune into the values as you name them, see how they feel in your system, and spend some time tapping on those to get clear so you're able to move forward. The third thing is, as you are coming up with values, you might find it difficult to come up with values. And if you are having difficulty coming up with values, it then is time to tune into the resistance to naming values at all. On the second point, it was about having resistance to specific values. It's also possible that we're just going to resist having values at all because either we don't feel we're worthy of claiming something like that, or we're afraid that claiming something like that is going to be set in stone. And so it's important that if we are having trouble naming the values, to spend a little time saying that we are worthy of, we are capable of, and we are deserving of naming some values. And then the last point that came up in the conversation, which I think is really important, is this recognition that we need to be in a resource state for transformation. So often, we think that all I need to do is I just need to tap and transformation is going to happen in my life. And that's great. But if I don't have the energy, or if I don't have the space, or if I don't have the time, or if I don't have the focus for transformation, then the tapping isn't going to be enough. That making sure that we are well rested, fed well, exercise, do those things, do our daily meditation practice, that we're doing those things to make sure that we are in a resource-rich state that is going to allow us to move forward in a way that is super, super effective. And so it's not just enough for us to be uncovering the emotional stuff that is there, which is great. It's also important making sure that when we sit down to tap and do this work, we have the resource to be able to make real transformation happen. Those are my reflections based off of the interview. I hope you found them useful. If you would like more information on JB and the amazing work he is doing, all you need to do is go to tappingqandapodcast.com. Click on the link for episode 233. You'll be able to find out all of his information and how you can track down his latest book. You can also find at that website every single podcast we have ever produced. That includes the bonus podcast, the 2-part podcast. Like I said at the beginning, we're closing in on 300 free resources just waiting for you at the site. People from all over the world have given their time to do interviews with me. By listening to that podcast and using that information, what you're doing is you're taking the time they invested and just giving it away, because all of my guests appear because they want to. And you get a chance to multiply that because you are utilizing that resource that they invested time in. If you know someone in your life who could use this podcast or anything in the archive, please, please, please be our ambassador. Pass it along. I'm not saying spam your entire inbox, but if there's someone you know who could use this, if you pass it along, it would mean the world to me, because there are people who need this that I can't reach, but you would be able to do that. Subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, in Stitcher, in TuneIn, in the Google Play Music Store. I just checked. We still have the #1 podcast for EFT in the Google Music Play Store, because we are still the only podcast for EFT in the Google Music Play Store. That still makes me happy that we are #1. If you haven't done so already, make sure you check out the amazing deal on Pain Relief Miracle. All you need to do is go to tappingqna.com/pain or click on the link in the show notes, and you will get information on how you can get 33% off your first order. If you have a question, if you have a comment, drop me a note, Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com, or you can just simply click on the contact link on the website. If you do use the form on the website, please, please, please include your email address if you would like to hear back from me. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.